And Joseph Hislop was the singing advisor at Sadler's Wells and Covent Garden in, I suppose, the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. And Ian Wallace had a very good thing in one of the volumes of his autobiography where he said, Hislop said, oh, well, come and have a drink. And Hislop took his finger and he says, the problem is with you, he said, is that your voice is that long. He said, but the building is that long. And by that kind of simple demonstration, he indicated to me that although he would do work in smaller houses, that's like Langmore, where he did all these comic roles, Ian, that probably the bigger theatres were not going to be for him. But also, with Joseph Hislop, I was introduced to him by the late George Donald. George Donald, of course, was best known as a member of Scotland the What, but of course George was a great pianist in a whole variety of styles and genres. And I was a colleague of George's at Perth Academy. He was the head of German, and I had just started teaching geography. And so that was our connection. And he had played quite a bit for various pupils who had gone to see Hislop. So he took me through to meet Jos Hislop, who lived at that stage, it seemed in the middle of nowhere, but it was kind of between Peatin and London Links, which is still probably in the middle of nowhere, but that's where it was. He'd retired there because I think his wife was had connections with Fife or something like that, and he himself was from Edinburgh originally, Hislop, and so I went there and met him.
And you were asked to sing at his funeral?
I sang at his funeral, yes, which was a very great honour. I went, I don't know, maybe two years or something, on and off. I would go and see him. And I suppose one of the abiding memories was the fact that driving up this road, this track really up to the farmhouse, Berryside, I think it was called, farmhouse. And as we got nearer to the house, then you could hear Hislop doing his scales, in preparation for a lesson at the age of 90, at 91. And the other thing was I'd done a little bit of work with him, and I was invited by the Edinburgh Choral Union to sing in the Messiah, the New Year's Day Messiah. And this was quite a thing because normally they'd always got their artists from Ibs and Tillet, and here they were getting a geography teacher from Perth, And so after Norman Walker and all all these great basses that they'd had over the years, so they asked me to come, and I did it, which was interesting enough, very raw, but I did it. And Hislop, bless him, Hislop came through from London Links to see the performance. 1st of January, just about 40 years ago now, but he came through, and it's rather typifies, I suppose, Scotland, and typifies him in a way, in that I was quite interested to know what he thought of it, the way one does with a teacher. And I said to a friend of mine, I said, did he say anything, during the performance? And the answer came back, yes. He said when it came to the break, he said, "Who's got the sandwiches?" That was it. So it was all very fine, That was who got the sandwiches. But it was a marvelous opportunity to meet him.
What was he like as a person?
Well, I think I saw him at the end of his life, and I suppose he changed a bit. The impression one had, of course, he came into it completely from the outside. He was a printer who went to Sweden to introduce colour printing, and then somebody said you should be in a male voice choir, and then once he was in the male voice choir, somebody said, well, you should have your voice trained, and then, in a very comparatively short period of time, he was then principal tenor in Stockholm. I think what would I say? I think a good conceit sounds, you know, perhaps backhanded. A decent conceit of his ability. That was sure. That was for sure. And I think that was perhaps exemplified by the fact that although he went to a lot of the great opera houses in the world, he tended to go looking at the history once. And I think there was a kind of Scottish thrownness, you know, when they would say, would you come again next year? And he said, well, I was very, very fine last year, so I think you may find it necessary to raise my, you know, honorarium somewhat if I'm going to come back. And I think there was a bit of that, you know, about him. But I would have. It's one of these things that you think, wouldn't it be marvelous to see a video or a DVD or something like that? Because I think he was undoubtedly very compelling on stage as well. You know, small man, but I think he had a great style on stage.